expectations. We create monsters. You know, it was John Quincy Adams who said that you know, America isn't and shouldn't be the country that goes abroad in search of monsters. And I think that for at least a few years after 9/11, we really lost that sense of who we are, and we did go in search of monsters, and we found an awful lot, and we may have created more than we imagined we would have. A very small tribe making wine, and most of the Pakistani army was getting drunk on the wine, and the jihadis were just running in past the Pakistani army, going into Afghanistan to kill the Americans. So, I mean, until Pakistan gets serious about helping us not only fight the war, but kind of root out these madrasas that are churning out jihadis left and right, then we're never going to win in Afghanistan. That's certainly, I think, the crux of the matter. And the guys running the radio station had a favorite young man who would send in tapes and poetry, and the Taliban found out about that, and I can read his poem here. It's in my book, but he basically wrote a love letter to his girlfriend and said that the armies of the night are on their way. You know, I don't think I'll be with you much longer. And I'm paraphrasing here, but the Taliban is everywhere, and they killed him. They went to his house, they warned him, they slapped him, they called him a lackey. 2 weeks later, they went to his house, they dragged, 17-year-old kid, they dragged him out of the arms of his mother, and they executed him up against a 10-foot wall. And that's the kind of intimidation they're using right now. Now, whether or not we want to negotiate with elements of the Taliban, you know, I think that that's the only exit strategy. But which elements and which ones are going to be the good murderers? Because it's been a very brutal regime, and we know what they've done, and we know how they treat women, etc. I think it's a very tough moral choice, but it may be, you know, in a Machiavellian sense, it may be the only choice. I wouldn't want anybody really to have to look at these videos, but I looked at a few, and some of them are very astounding, because you'll see a crowd in the form of a gauntlet, and a Muslim man with a sword chasing a Christian man, and basically trying to cut his head off. And he catches up to him, and he starts to slice his neck, and he hits him in the head, and the crowd is cheering. But the interesting thing about the video is that the videographer is perfectly placed to basically film this entire snuff movie, and really gets a good bird's eye view of the slaughter that unfolds in front of you. They would have a peace pact by dipping their swords and their spears in a bowl of blood, their own blood mixed with palm wine, and then they would drink this. And that would mean that the Christian villages would not attack the Muslim villages. And they thought that there were two paths to God, and one path was the Muslim God, and the other path was the Christian God, but they would arrive at the same confluence in the bubbling volcano. Indeed, there was a time centuries ago when Timbuktu was probably the best place on earth to buy a book. That is, if you could catch the books on the camels as they went from one oasis to the next. And America is seen to be fighting a proxy war there on the side of the Israelis. Now that is unfortunate, because as CENTCOM has noted in their memos to the Senate Foreign Services Committee, that allows Al-Qaeda and the jihadists to recruit on the back of the perception. Hosni Mubarak is probably one of the most brutal, indecent dictators in the world today, and unfortunately, he's also appearing to be our ally in a way. And I think that bin Laden, when I was up in Chitral province in Pakistan, and you know that there had been recently you saw in the news that a gentleman kind of half crazy, half crazed had been up there kind of hunting and trying to kill bin Laden. And the Americans thought he was up in Chitral area. They think he might well be there. And you know, that people still hunting for him. Of course, I would like to say right here that if this chap ever gets him, that I will claim him as my half cousin.